Fab. Lovely to see you all. Introduce our wonderful host for the evening very soon. Before I do, I just want to say a special thanks to Virgin Money, who sponsored.
Yeah.
Enjoy your drinks.
So,
I look forward to catching up soon.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to take the purple one. Because that one's definitely what. Oh, okay. I'll take the orange one. Yeah, good shout. Awesome. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yay, you can do better than that. Come on. Hi, everyone. Woo! I love that. I love that energy. I am so excited to be here as always. I'm particularly excited about this conversation tonight with the wonderful co-founder of Self-Space. I'm a really, really big fan, so I'm going to try my best not to just fangirl all the way through this, but I can't promise. I can't promise anything. So those of you who have been to Changemakers before will know that we always like to do a little icebreaker with the audience to get you talking to each other. And this month, we have something really exciting to help us do that. We have these wonderful little cards called Deep and Meaningfuls, which are created by Self-Space. And they are a number of cards that have thought-provoking questions in them. So I wanted to just pick one at random, but apparently there are some like really deep and challenging ones in there. So we've pre-selected one with Chance's help. So do I close it back up? So the question we would like you to think about and share what you're comfortable with the person sitting next to you or someone around you is, what do you find difficult to admit?
Ooh.
Ooh. You were like, this one was meant to be easy. So I'll say that again. What do you find difficult to admit? Have a little think about it, and we'll take a minute or so and share what you're comfortable with. No pressure.
What do you find difficult to admit? Leon. Vulnerabilities. Yeah. Yeah. think for me, when I'm struggling, when I'm really struggling, I find it difficult to admit when I'm really, really struggling. I'll say like when I'm stressed a little bit, but when I'm really struggling, I go quiet. It's like, yeah. It's like, when I'm wrong, it's like, I'll keep arguing.
I just wasn't wrong, you know, I had a clash with my wife.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
But you carried on, it's not me, it's you.
Yeah.
Through therapy, I was like, sorry, but
Yeah.
take full responsibility.
Yeah. It's a good accountability provider in a therapy, like in that space. I think I'm like 50% less an arsehole since going to therapy.
Yeah, I'm still in the same website.
Yeah.
It's a sound issue sorted. Yeah. Hi everyone on the live stream.
Yeah.
I think we have the sound back, so that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many interesting
It's
conversations
not
happening.
about- you don't admit anything.
They're not stopping. Hi everyone. Sorry to interrupt. That sounded a bit passive aggressive. Sorry about that. I am genuinely sorry to interrupt. It sounds like there were some really interesting conversations happening, but we got to move on. We've got another conversation to have. So this month's Changemaker, can we have quiet in the back, please? Quiet, please. Okay. Thank you. So this month's Changemaker is revolutionizing therapy and how we approach therapy. They're making therapy as normal for our health as going to the gym. We love that. They're taking on the mental health crisis of insane wait lists and inaccessibility and all of that stuff that we hear about so often by bringing therapy to our high streets and making it as easy as possible to get stuff that felt unheard of for a really long time, like same-day therapy appointments. So I have been a huge fan of Self-Space for some time. You'll probably see me commenting on almost all of their LinkedIn posts, no regrets. And I have also used Self-Space, both their therapy service, their workshops. And last week, I forced my partner to go to their Valentine's couple workshop on communication. Would recommend, both for fun and educational reasons. So let's give a really warm welcome to our February Changemaker, Chance Marshall. Yay! Hi.
Hello.
So good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Get yourself comfortable.
How are you doing? Really nervous. Oh my God, there's loads of people. I'm not allowed to swear.
Of course you are. I don't know. I usually swear. I don't know.
No.
No one's told me off before
All
yet,
right.
so
Well, I'll try not
yeah,
to.
we might not get invited back, but at least we'll do that together.
Yeah, I'll try not to. Is it on?
The purple one.
Hello? I did lick one of these mics.
It was this one actually. I think it's on.
Yeah. Hello. All right.
I feel like you should give him an even bigger hello than you gave me. So, do you want to do it one more time? I just like making it really awkward.
Hello.
Yeah. I feel like we should start by answering that question, right? What do you find hard to admit?
What do I find hard to admit? Other than when I'm wrong, which is like, I really find it hard to admit when I'm wrong, and I'll argue, even though I know I'm wrong, and I push past the point. I think for me, what I find hard to admit is when I'm really struggling. So I find it quite easy to say I'm stressed and I'm busy, but when I'm really struggling, I go very quiet, and I won't admit that. Yeah.
That resonates with me a lot.
Yeah, how about you?
Oh, how about me? Well, I resonate with both of those examples massively. And I guess mine is probably quite similar. I struggle to admit when I don't know something. which can get me in quite sticky situations because I can be quite convincing. I'm quite an opinionated person, but sometimes I forget to like step back and listen. So that's something I'm working on.
Yeah.
But it's hard to admit that. I actually feel uncomfortable now that I've admitted it and it's on camera. I'm like, oh no.
Sweaty upper lip.
Oh, I was sweating anyway. It's hot in here.
It's good to admit. I think it's good. We often start workshops with something that really will kind of just humanize the conversation we're having. And at Self Space, we do a check-in. Every meeting we do a check-in, and we'll each bring a question. And the question this week was, what's the low light from your weekend? And it was just like, it could be really depressing, that. But actually, it was the one check-in that everybody left feeling a bit more connected. So yeah, thank you for answering.
We just on that, in my team, at the end of every meeting, at the end of every week in our kind of like checkout meeting, we go round and we say highlights, lowlights, no, highs, lows, and uh-ohs. So like, what was something good? What was something that wasn't so good? And where did we fuck up? Because let's celebrate them, because we all do it.
Yeah, bring it into the light.
So we're going to talk a lot about self-space. That's a given. That's why everyone's here. But I would love to hear a little bit about you first. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what were you like growing up? Like, what were the... I'm worried that you're going to judge me for trying to ask therapy questions. I'm genuinely not.
Tell me about your childhood.
No, but I'd love to, like, how did you get into therapy? Why that career choice?
Yeah. I noticed there's two friends here from the Northeast.
Can we have a wave?
And they've got a very different version of me that they've known. You know, they've been witness to me across my lifetime. And I'm just kind of really taking stock of that at this moment. So I have to speak the truth. I really have to speak the truth. For me, growing up, I was the son of two addicted parents, and they both died. My mum died about 6 years ago. And my dad died when I was 8, and my whole family were a family of addicts, and they really struggled. And I don't use that word lightly, and I think it's a word that they use themselves. And it was just an attempt to solve a problem for them. And I was born into this world of, real poverty and real struggle. And nobody talked about how they felt ever. Nobody ever talked about how they felt. Conversations would happen behind closed kitchen doors, and but I'd always kind of be wondering, like, what's going on? What's happening here? And I think so I was kind of attuned to this. I was tuned to the lack of kind of emotional vocabulary and language growing up, and I had a pull towards kind of understanding people, and that, I really found that through the arts and drama. Growing up, I was really misbehaved at school. I got kicked out a lot. I used to have to go home for my dinner because I'd have fights at dinner time. It's really got into a lot of kind of trouble. But the one thing I enjoyed is drama. And there was one teacher. I think we all have those teachers, like one or two that we remember. The ones that kind of went a little bit further to really make us feel like we belonged there. And mine was Ellie Hopwood, and she was amazing, and she was like, she really believed in me, and she'd let me kind of knock about with her, really. When I didn't want to do other lessons, I'd kind of go to drama, and I'd find myself kind of kicking about. And I think when I was about 15, she was doing a class for year 6s going up to year 7 of autistic children, and she was running a kind of drama class, and I was doing it with her, and I was supporting these kids, and I was like, oh God, this is amazing. I was like, imagine if this was a job. And she was like, it is a job. You can do this as a job. And it was the first time I was like, oh, shit, like, just switched on. She wrote down on a piece of paper, college, uni, job. And it was like the first time anyone in my life said, look, you can do this. And so I went like a really long way around becoming a therapist. I started off kind of in the arts, and I did a creative arts psychotherapy master's at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And I couldn't afford to get on, didn't have any money. So, so very emotional talking about it. But these paid for my therapy, I kind of got on, and there was about 40 friends who said, look, you've got on the course, and really moving. They got on the course and you have to go. So they were like, right, well, we're going to pay for it. And so my wife's dad said, look, I'm going to invest in your rent. And 40 friends said, no, we're going to pay for your therapy, which was amazing. And yeah, very grateful.
That's gorgeous.
Here I
That
am.
is so. Thank you for sharing that with us
Yeah.
as well. Like, that's a really 100%.
Welcome to like really intense group therapy. But yeah, it's a miracle. Like it really is a miracle that I ended up here and ended up in the position I'm in now. And it's not for like just real investment from people into me and into my life. And yeah, I'm very grateful.
And I guess did that kind of that support and generosity and kind of belief. I'm like, maybe I'm making a link too quick there of like, when we talk about self-space and how the accessibility part and it being like, we're here for you, like when you need it, like just come in. Like I've seen you talk about that, like really labor that point, like walk into one of our stores. I don't know if stores, one of our sites. And there will be someone there to talk to you. Is that kind of, does that kind of link back to that experience you just shared?
Well done. You could be a good therapist. I think it's no coincidence that we do. I don't think any of us here. I don't believe in coincidence, and I don't believe it's ever a coincidence that we do the work we do. And the first question when you do a therapy training is, why do you want to be a therapist? And I think self-space in so many ways encaptures what my experience was growing up and then being facilitated to access therapy. And I think that's why, when I met Jodie Carris as, the OG founder at Self-Space, much more glamorous and articulate and better presenter. She's an amazing woman, and she started it. And I met her just at the beginning. It was like week one, and I just said to her, because I didn't start as co-founder, I just said, look, let me come on board as a therapist, and I'll do a couple of days. I said, you just pay me by the hour. And it kind of gradually progressed. But I don't think it's a coincidence that this was the thing that I connected with. This was the thing that I thought, you know what, I'm going to give my time and energy and creativity to this thing to make it work. And
Because that's really interesting that you kind of right time, right place, met the right people in the context of like Jodie and self-space. Because one of the things that I was going to ask is, did you, like at what point, or did you, I guess, have any inklings about running a business or anything like that?
Yeah, like I was kind of, so my first degree was in performance practice. I was a kind of starving artist. There's no way I could have made money from doing that. And I really have a deep admiration for people who do. But I worked in retail for about 7 years, and I kind of ran menswear stores and ended up kind of, I worked for a lot of kind of retail brands. And so I'd always kind of worked. I'd always loved working. Yeah. And I think if it wasn't self-space, it would have been something of that shape and size. Before I did that, I was working with refugees and asylum seekers in addiction, unsurprisingly, and in kind of schools and prisons. And I'd bike across London. It'd take me an hour to get from place to place, but I was just in the work and I'd love the work. And I thought, you know what, I will do something. And at that time I met Jodie, who'd started this thing. And I thought, well, do you want some help? And she was like, well, no. And gradually we kind of we
chipped away.
We kind of established a good working relationship.
I love that. And I, as a co-founder myself, I'm always really interested in co-founder relationships and how, in many ways, they are like it's a marriage of sorts. You've kind of committed to something, this kind of shared mission together. And there's highs and lows, as I imagine there, as I know they are in relationships as well. How have you and Jodie navigated your co-founder relationship over the years?
We're two therapists, and it's really important to remember that. Also, my wife's a therapist. And it's like these two women in my life are really fucking articulate and incredibly emotionally intelligent, very quick. But I think with me and Jodie, we actually are very similar. Like, we got very similar backgrounds, and she was from similarly a very working class background and found herself kind of, going around like a big loop towards therapy through presenting. She's a TV presenter for a while. And so we've worked really hard on how we work together, and that's looked like different things across the years. It's looked like intentional time. We'll take ourselves away for a retreat and we'll run a retreat for each other. So she'll run half, I'll run half, and we'll facilitate for each other. It's looked like joint supervision. So we went with a kind of senior therapist who sat us down and goes, right, how are the stories of your lives showing up in this business, and how are you relating to each other, and what does that mean? And looking at it all through a kind of psychodynamic lens, and goes, well, the story of my life and the story of your life, they're kind of meeting. Whether we're talking about that or not, they're kind of meeting. And it's up to us to kind of untangle that as much as possible. And I think as co-founders, like any kind of dual relationship, there can often be a kind of compensatory function that you'll hold for each other. We might call that therapy. And so often, much of our work is around how we balance out how we're compensating for each other. So sometimes, and she won't mind me saying this, if she's been a bit of an arse, I'll be really nice. And if I'm being a bit of an arse, she'll be really nice. And often we'll kind of balance each other out. And in other days, that might look like, look, I've got 20% I can give today. I'm absolutely knackered. You're going to have to bring the other 80, because there's a team looking at us to guide them and to support them and give them a bit of direction. And so often we're kind of, just kind of grabbing that for each other and supporting each other. And but yeah, it's really hard work. I don't think it's easy. I don't think any co-founder relationship is easy. And I think you have to kind of have to have a base level of like love for each other in one way, really platonically, but a base level of just love and knowing that no matter how they're showing up, I speak about myself here, no matter how they're showing up, they mean well. And it's like, how do we trust that, in each other and in what we're trying to do together?
Yeah, 100%. I can only imagine what it's like having two therapist co-founders. I think me and Alicia try and do that for each other. I'm not sure if it's legit, but maybe you can give me some feedback on that sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm conscious that we haven't. Well, I did a bit of a intro to Self Space, and I imagine that pretty much everyone here probably knows what it is, but it's actually grown in terms of its scope and a bit before we came in. Can you summarize what Self Space is now, and maybe also a little bit what Self Space is becoming too?
Yeah. We talk about ourselves as a kind of on-demand mental health service on the high street.
Ta-da!
The world's first, which is like a proper wanky marketing, but it actually is, I think, and nobody else is doing it yet. So look, we opened Self Space in 2018, and it was in a very, very tiny converted stable in Shoreditch, and it had 2 rooms, and it was terrible for clients who were claustrophobic because they couldn't even open the door. And we had some serious problems, and we had to go outside for the toilet because there was a toilet outside. It was like the fucking 1920s, and it was a really cold space, but it was like warm with people, and we opened it. And when we opened, we just put this really heavy wooden sign out the front. Somebody asked me at the bar, I was like, how did you get your first client? I thought that was a great question. I just said we put the sign out and just hope someone would notice it and come in. It was like, literally, there was no marketing, there was no real robust business plan. We haven't really spent anything on the marketing. And I know a lot of founders say that, but quite genuinely, we spent very little in 5 years. And in the first 2 years, nothing, literally not a penny other than, tote bags and visuals. But so we kind of opened up this little space in Shoreditch, and it was like next door to a Vietnamese restaurant. Shoreditch Nails and Nail Bar, it's incredible, still going now. An eyelash bar, and then mental health. And people would come in and go, "What's this then? What are you doing?" It's for the head.
It sounds great though, a bit of everything. Like that's a pamper day for
nails,
me.
Skin.
Yeah, and some great food. Lovely.
Vietnamese.
Yeah.
Vietnamese and therapy. But yeah, we opened it, and I don't think Jodie would. She said this as well. She didn't anticipate how busy it would become very quickly. And our first client came in and just said, "Hey, I'd like to book a session, please." And used to do it on the phone of like how many sessions we needed to cover to pay the rent, and we kind of check and go, "Oh, we did rent, class. It's a good day." And then Wyden and Kennedy, and our agency in Shoreditch, just around the corner, they came in and Jody worked there years ago, and they said, well, can you come and do a bit of work with us? And they were the first kind of B2B project that we had, and they came and said, well, we'll buy a bundle of therapy sessions for staff, and come and do a couple of workshops and talks. And so all of a sudden it kind of opened up this other avenue of business that equally we didn't kind of massively plan for or anticipate. And so that was in 2018, and very quickly, kind of particularly the creative industries, advertising, media, what we work with now, probably the top 25 of the top 30 ad agencies in the UK, a lot of them in London, kind of Saatchi, Widens, Omnicom, load of others, and that kind of industry was the first one to kind of really take off, really on the kind of B2B side, and really hard market to crack. Advertisers are really, really like, you cannot fool them. It's like they're the ones doing the fooling, and I suppose they really met us actually and really championed what we did. And there's a few like early people, kind of HR leads, who to this day just continue to refer on and support. And so kind of that grew. So now Salespace, we've got 4 sites. The 5th one we've just signed for King's Cross, Coldcroft Yard, which is opening up hopefully in May. We had a floor problem, but we'll see what happens. If my investors are listening to this, it's fine, don't worry. So we got Shoreditch, Soho, just on Berwick Street, which is amazing. London Bridge, Manchester, Ducey Street, King's Cross. And then we're thinking about 2 things. We're going to do a barge boat or a camper van or a school, one of them. The entire strategy isn't together yet, but it's one of them.
Do you want to vote? Hands up.
Yes, that's where we're at now. We went from 5 therapists at the time to well over 100, maybe 120 with a psychoeducation delivery team. They're a mix of clinical psychologists, psychotherapists, arts therapists, and a lot of the therapists on the team, they come having worked in businesses or having run businesses, so they've come. We're really interested in getting a cohort of therapists who, one, are diverse, but 2, have also a diverse kind of work background as well. So, we've got restaurant owners, we have an actor, from the telly, proper actor. We have people who have run startups themselves and then became therapists. We've had people from advertising who became therapists. And there's this like community of people who are just like incredibly committed to pushing on this conversation, to normalize what it means to look after our mental health in a way that isn't just when shit hits the fan, but just proactively. How do we do that?
Yeah, that proactiveness as part of your messaging has been one of the things that like definitely like spoke to me personally, because my initial, I've had long-term therapy twice, and both of them was like a kind of break point moment. And it wasn't until I came across Self-Space that I was just like, and specifically, I remember one of the workshops that I did, that I went along, that you ran, that was specifically called like mental maintenance. I think it was for people, because I'm in the culture space. And I was like, that's such a good way to look at it. Like, why haven't I thought about that before? Like, why haven't I thought about, I focus a lot on my physical health, but I've never really approached my mental health like that. Do you see that changing? Where are we in that kind of like shift, would you say?
Yeah. Well done for committing to 2 long-term therapy processes.
Thanks.
That's amazing.
I'm trying to find the next one. In a proactive way.
Yeah. Not in a crisis. Look, I think there's more mental health awareness than there's ever been. That is for certain. Like, there's more mental health awareness than there's ever been before. And when we started, 5 years ago, there was very few people doing what we do in terms of, even on the B2B side. It's incredibly crowded now, in a good way, in some instances, in a terrible way, in others. I don't have to talk about that. I might talk about that later. But on that, that attitude towards arriving at therapy, I still think we've got a long way to go. Particularly in the UK, I know a lot of people are still arriving at us at a point of real overwhelm, and it does take a lot. I think it's such a paradox, because I think for me, going to therapy, taking the first step, is one of the most profoundly brave things we can do, because it's saying, maybe my life's a bit fucked and I want it to be less fucked. So I'm going to go and speak to someone who's going to meet me with compassion and care. And I'm going to do the thing that I want. It's the opposite to what I want to do, which is talk about the thing that's really painful. And I think for that reason, it's a profoundly brave thing to do. On the other hand, it's just a conversation. It's just a conversation. You're just having a conversation, but with someone who's really good at having them, with someone who's really good at listening, and someone who's really skilled at asking the right questions to get underneath whatever defenses we carry around to look after ourselves. And I still think we're maybe at this point here that's about to tip over into a more kind of proactive way of engaging in it. And the way that we're doing that is not looking down people into contracts. So anyone can come to Self Space for one-off session. So you don't have to commit to an ongoing process. The encouragement is there. Most of my clients I've worked with for about 5.5 years now, weekly. So they're really committed to open-ended work. There was this kind of real fear when we started that people just wouldn't commit. And actually the opposite happened when we give people the flexibility to choose their therapist, choose their time, change the time, because it's really human to have to change their therapy time and not get charged for it. And set their own rhythm of it. I think that's allowing people to engage in it in a way that isn't towards just crisis, but like a kind of practice, like the yoga, maybe the yoga.
Yeah.
Just I've got to practice it, and I think that's kind of gone a long way. But I think we're still a bit away from. I don't know what people think about that, but what do you think about that? I think we're still a bit away from the kind of action part. I think people are still just arriving there when they feel kind of overwhelmed, and that's okay. But
Yeah. I think there's definitely a movement, and I think that there is there's a lot of positive change. But I kind of look at some of my friends, or like my partner, for example, who is not like shut off from therapy, but it's like that doesn't feel like it's for me. It's for a certain type of person, and he's not like particularly macho or like he's great. We love him, but maybe it's like a different experience as a man growing up. I think there's definitely something there. I think that until it's more normal across like genders and like races and like different parts of society and stuff like that, because I still think that there's like an exclusivity to it that would suggest that we're like not as far like what you just described.
Look, it's a conversation we have to have. It's an incredibly privileged thing in the world to do, to afford therapy. It's incredibly privileged. And while we're not a charity at Self Space, for Jodie and I anyway, it's been front and center for us in terms of the trajectory of the business, getting ourselves to a point where we're able to open out therapy to people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford it. And we're doing that in ways of offering low-cost counselling and psychotherapy, ways of working with programs with University of East London to bring in kind of really good, competent, newly qualified therapists and putting them on kind of lower rates. We're thinking about kind of group-based models, and I think that area in and of itself there's a huge amount of work to do on a governmental level, societal level, but also for us as kind of business owners and people who are running therapy services. There's so much more that needs to be done, and we're definitely not getting that perfect at the minute. So.
Oh, but you're nailing what you're doing. I think that is definitely safe to say. And one of the things you're also nailing is the brand and the marketing. Like, I think that for me personally, and I'd love to know if you agree in the audience as well. Like, I think the way you show up both personally, but like how Self Space as a brand shows up on like LinkedIn and Instagram and like all of the kind of physical touches, it's so refreshing and human, and it feels like you're talking to a person. It feels like you're talking to you a lot of the time, which I know you mentioned that it prompts often you are quite involved. Something I wrote down here, it's simple, yet that kind of like is what makes it so brilliant and so warm. And I guess, how do you get that so right? And how do you keep so consistent with it?
That's really kind. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the only consistent thing at Soul Space is like absolute chaos. Like it's not. It might look consistent.
That's reassuring. I think for a lot of us.
It might look tidy, like the front. Front of the shop's lovely. Back of shop is a mess.
But the rooms and everything are beautiful.
That's lovely. It looks beautiful. But I think in the team, and I'd be lying if I was sitting here going, you know what? Everyone's really calm. No one's overwhelmed. Everyone's absolutely on the same page and aligned all the time. It's just not the case. And I think particularly on the marketing, there's something really interesting happens when we take mental health and it meets marketing. And always, for whatever reason, therapists have this little snake eating its own tail on their website, or like this horrible fonts, or like that picture, the stock image of like the man with his head in his hand. You know what I'm on about, with the kind of leather chair, or like the stones on top of each other.
Oh, yes.
And everybody knows it's not very chill. I think therapists think it's chill. It's not very chill. But this weird thing happens when like therapy meets marketing. It has done for years, and I think it's because I think historically therapy has been incredibly stigmatized, and going to therapy has been incredibly, it's like a dirty word for a lot of people. And I think that the marketing hasn't helped it, and the way it's been framed hasn't helped it. And so we just try to keep it really simple, really human. In terms of the marketing, I really use that word really lightly because we've only just got a marketing manager. It's Jade, she's amazing. She's been with us for about 8 months. Before that, it was just me and Jodie's kind of like just trying to do it. And it was just us, and we did everything. And I still write kind of 95% of the copy. And it's something that I enjoy doing, something I do as a practice. And I think, and we haven't had a marketing strategy for 5 years, which is really stressful for people coming in, but it's kind of worked for us because it's meant that we've just been able to kind of do what we've been doing without attaching it to KPIs. And even with the investment that we've got recently, like everyone's just asking about this kind of seeming pressure, and we're not meeting it with pressure, because I think if we can still do what we do creatively, we'll get to where we need to be without worrying too much about that kind of measurement piece. I think when marketing meets measurement, sometimes it can become creativity gets killed. So thank you. It's a wink and a prayer. There's not much to it. But
you know what? I love that though, because I think that there's like a big part of these events is what can we learn from other founders and other people building great businesses, and I think that there is a learning there of. You don't have to go from 0 to 100, or you don't have to seek that perfect setup or that perfect way of doing things straight away, or even fairly far into your. It's like what does your business need right now, and adapting to that. Because I think that with marketing, for example, so we have someone supporting us now, but for a very long time it was just me and Liz, and we kept trying to change that, and it never worked. And we kind of sat back and was like, well, actually, should we keep trying to fix that problem that we think is a problem, but actually it's not, because the content that we're creating is resonating with people. So yeah, I just think there's something like progress over perfection is kind of what came to mind there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody's quick to give you a strategy for your business. Yeah. Everybody, the amount of people who email like, oh, can we do strategy for self-space? I was like, no. So,
that's why you didn't get back to me. No, I'm joking. I haven't done that.
And I think everyone's very quick. And actually what we found is like, just do it. Just do something. Try it. And some of the stuff's been amazing. It's really worked. And other stuff just kind of fell on its arse. But I think it's been fun and we've enjoyed it. And I think particularly the enjoyment piece, I think for so many founders, I don't know if there's any here now, but it's a slog. Like most of the time, it's miserable. I don't know about you. Like a lot of the time, it's just grunt work. Like it's just really, really hard work. And whenever you get a moment of joy, just keep onto it like a thread. Like keep hold of it, keep following it, keep doing it. Because it's really hard. It's really, yourself. We talked about it earlier. It's like a lot of the work. It's just really hard and often boring. So I'm just trying my best to keep this up. And I think sometimes there's this idea about like running a business that would be dead sexy and like dead important. It's like, oh, great. Actually, it's just like, it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
With that in mind, I had another question that I wanted to ask, but I think I'm really interested in what are some of your favorite things about building self-space. I think that would be fun. Yeah.
I think for me, it's sitting in the site. So like, I try my best every Wednesday. I live in Leeds now. Actually, I commute down to London and I practice 1 day a week as a therapist. I'm kind of holding on to that, despite how busy the business is getting. My identity as a therapist is really important. And on a Wednesday, I'll go down and I'll go an hour early and I'll just sit in the waiting room and watch people come in or walk past. And it's just like, there's been some incredible moments. When we opened up on Livingston Street, it's kind of the biggest site we opened at the time. And like the first week, I think there was about over 10 practices that I had personally with people. And you know, one of them was a man walking past, just like bits, and he's just like, knackered. And he was kind of burnt out. And then he came back and our co-founder booked him in for the session. It's just like, oh, that's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
The day after, there was his family had took their own life. Tragic. And it's just like, panicking. Therapy in the NHS just taking too long. Booked in like same day. And it's just these moments of like instantaneous meeting of need. And we're not a crisis service, but we are there, and we're not going to turn anyone away. And even if it's a point, you know, I had an email the other day. There was a kind of Geordie woman who came in. She was amazing. She won't mind me sharing this. And she was frazzled, and she just like she met by 2 other northeasterners in the space of a cup of tea, and sat her down. And she booked in for therapy again the day after. And I think those moments for me are constant reminders that we're on the right path. You know, we're doing the right thing. And I think the site model, you know, particularly around the investment piece, there's a lot of investors going, it just doesn't work. This is not profitable enough. You shouldn't do it. Don't roll it out. Don't do it. And until we met, you know, Red Rice, who we're working with now, and they were like, this is what you have to do. You have to follow it. Even though it's not the most profitable, you have to follow it. And I think that cultural piece, you know, placing therapy on the high street, at the heart of our communities, for people who might not even need it or know they need it, but might walk past it and catches their eye. For me, that's probably my kind of favourite part of what we're doing, and the part that I kind of connect with the most and gives me kind of energy. Yeah, and that I'm practicing still as a therapist. It's like, it's the best job. I see the piece in the Financial Times where it's like, it's the profession of the century. Everyone's like going into it. I think, great. Yeah, imagine what the world would look like if like there were more therapists. And I'm not putting them on a kind of moral high ground, because we're all mad. Like most therapists you meet, if like they've really suffered, and I think the best therapists have really suffered. But I think actually, you know, they're also really kind, you know, warm people, and I love that. I love practicing still as a therapist.
I love that.
Yeah.
I actually have so many more questions, but I've got my signal that I need to soon let our lovely audience ask some questions. So I'm going to ask one more. Let's squeeze one more in. And that is, I would love to hear what mental maintenance looks like for you personally. So what's your mental maintenance cheat sheet or checklist?
Screaming into a pillow.
Love. Right, that's it. I'll do
That's it. Screaming.
Done.
Irresponsibly into a pillow. I think for me, mental maintenance. Do you know what? It was about 8 years since I stepped inside of a gym, and I went to the gym. There's any gym bros in here? So
Yeah.
a deadlifted summit. Pick this everything up, put it down,
and then screamed
picked it
into the
up.
pillow.
Yeah, screamed into the pillow. And it really, really annoyed me that after all the intense, incredibly academic psychoanalysis that I've had, weekly psychoanalysis for 8 years, non-stop, the thing that's helped me, really helped me, is picking up a heavy thing, putting it down again. And that's been amazing. So I go to the gym, and it's that really kind of keeps me going. It gets me out of my head. I'm in my head a lot. That and been out on the moors and playing with my kids. You know, I think every now and then, my wife, Mim, she'll hear me on a call, be stressed, or like I'll close my laptop and I'm like, and she'll come in and she'll just put my boy in my arms. It's like, whew, snap out of that. Come back here, come back here, come back here. And I think that's good mental maintenance to remember what's important. And sometimes the business, no matter how important I make it feel, isn't as important as people in my life. And I think often getting those reminders, you know, no matter how much I care about this day, I think also these people around me. I think that's good mental maintenance. How about you?
Oh, good question. I didn't think you would say that back. Not gonna lie. Well, this year, the start of this year, I was telling you earlier, I've been really focusing in on my health. So for me, good sleep and tracking it obsessively, which is probably not a good part of it, but like I'm really focused on like what's happening before I go to bed, like that wind down and being really strict about the hour before I go to bed. Like that has to be like shut off time. So that's really helped. Drinking enough water, being hydrated.
Your skin looks.
Oh, thank you. I have been working hard on it. Yeah, it's funny, like you, simple things, going to the gym, drinking water. Like, it's
really simple, isn't it?
I know.
It's the stuff that goes
I was
out the
hoping
window.
you would maybe give us something.
Profound.
Not saying that you haven't, but you know, for the
Go
last
and
one.
lift heavy things.
Yeah.
Still go to therapy. I think there's a lot of people who go to the gym and go, "Oh, this is my therapy." It's not, mate. You need to go to therapy still. But yeah. Anyway, I've rambled on. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
No, in fact, you're
We're not
amazing.
on. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I'm sure some of you have some questions for Chance, so we're going to open up the Q&A now. By the way, what I have to do is repeat the question for you, or you can repeat the question, or we can both repeat the question, just so people online can hear it.
Cool.
Who would like to kick us off? Hi, do you want to introduce yourself and so we know who you are?
Hello, yeah, my name's Chris. Been to a few of these events before. It's fun, really interesting. You just got such a just a beautiful way about you. Just since you sat up there, it's been so enjoyable listening to you talk. Honestly, it's been great.
Thank you, man.
So, well done for everything you've done. Just curiosity for one thing you said, and I was just thinking about it because I know some people sort of working in kind of mental health charities. And you sort of picked up on saying we're not a crisis. What was the word? You said we're not a crisis.
Not a crisis service.
Service, yeah.
Not a service, just a
How
crisis.
do you, like, in the moment, how do you differentiate between that with people coming in and if they're like, you know, are some kind of crisis? Like, what happens?
Yeah, what's your name again?
Chris.
So Chris has just asked, like, how do we differentiate ourselves from being a crisis service? When in the moment, you know, if someone comes in, I think to answer that, we don't in the moment. If someone comes in and they're in crisis, we deal with it. You know, and we got a front of house model at Salspace, so every one of our sites have got a front of house. You know, and shout out to them. They are doing incredible work, and we kind of train them up with the kind of mental health champs training and the kind of basics really to meet people where they're at. And we've got a robust kind of signposting service. So if anyone does come in and they're in crisis, which they do, we're able to kind of, you know, really give them very clear steps. And if they're there and they're in risk, so we do risk assessment. If they're in risk, we're not going to let them go. We're going to call an ambulance and support them properly. So we assess the level of risk and then we signpost them on, you know, in the immediate. But in the moment we don't. But again, what I meant by that is that we don't frame ourselves as a crisis service, and I think there's a lot of absolute overwhelm. There's a lot of crisis services that have got wait lists, which is wild, right? Even kind of A&Es, right? You know, and kind of they're just kind of inundated. And I think the level of the level of crisis now, the threshold's so high. You have to be almost. And trigger warning for this, you have to be almost ready to die in order to be seen. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the proactive piece, which is like, let's just stop trying to like rescue people from wanting to die and start dealing with that thing that might turn into that, but actually even just right at the very beginning of it, within their workplace, where they are on the high street, we're trying to kind of really attend to that before it gets to a problem. But in the moment we support people, we kind of don't turn people away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, we've got someone at the back there. Yes, you.
Hi, my name's Ricky. I'm founder, co-founder of a company called Sixology. Really interesting. Thank you, Chance, for the opportunity to speak with you and talk about your business and how it's grown. I'm quite keen because I've looked at this space some time ago, probably about 10 years ago, and followed Better Up as a model and seeing how you, in particular, didn't focus on coaching. You very much said it's about therapy, which is amazing because it's normally seen as a stigmatism, whereas therapists are quite used to that. But I'm just keen to understand a bit more about your commercial model. How do you take your commercial interests? Are your therapists freelance? And then secondly, what proportion is organizations, companies versus individual?
Just to get you to sign an NDA, pal. Happy to answer that. So we are therapists, and that is very intentional. I think there's coaching services out there. When we're not coaching service, we are qualified therapists, and we have therapists who also did a coaching training, so we do offer that as well. Out of all the therapists, we have a kind of core team of therapists. We have a kind of clinical kind of team, a clinical director, lead clinicians who are the kind of holding and the guardians of the community of therapists, and they work closely with us and the employees, and then the rest are freelance. So we've developed like really good, strong relationships with freelancers who work with us and who have other. I think there's something really important about that as a therapist, that we don't just stay with one client group. It gets really tough when we do, and I think there's a real benefit. So a lot of our therapists might work within ED clinics, or for the NHS, or for other spaces. And then the split, in terms of revenue, in terms of sessions delivered, it's kind of roughly 50-50, which is really interesting. So like the B2C part, Salesforce, I don't know how we've got so many B2C clients, but they kind of keep coming. We don't spend anything. We haven't spent one penny on paid social, SEO, spend nothing. Just organic, so they just find us through that, or we word of mouth through businesses. And then we work with over 200 businesses now, and some of them might be like Red Bull, Huel, Oatly, kind of drinks and kind of food and drink, kind of the Old Vic Theatre, kind of cultural institutions like that in London, and some kind of a lot of ad agencies, law firms, and these are people who have just like are really willing to put their money where their mouth is about supporting their people, and a lot of businesses talk about it, but very few actually spend the money on it. And so there's a good chunk of our business comes from those companies, and I think for us that's a good way to solve this problem of access, because if kind of like a bit like Robin Hood of therapy was, so let's just get a bit of money from over here, distribute it over here. It's kind of working well.
Hi.
My name's Mona. I signed up to the newsletter a couple of years ago. I don't remember how, but the events have been amazing. First of all, incredible work. And I really loved what you were saying about either doing a minute camper van or the school. I think those two options would be amazing, as in sort of moving around. And one question, are you thinking about doing it for kids as well? So when you go to the school, would it be for the kids? Would it be just a sort of location? Parents would definitely need it. And the other question is, it's so needed. How are you going to grow? How are you going to make, because it's something that basically everyone's sort of crying out for.
Yeah. So can you say your name again?
Mona.
Mona.
Yeah.
So Mona just asked, do we support children, young people, and how are we going to grow? That second one's going to take a bit of time, I don't know. I do, again, if the investors are listening, I absolutely know. Exactly know. I promise you a good return in your investment. So Mona asked, children and young people, look, Jodie's business before Self-Space was a business called Caris Creative, and she put therapists in schools for 15 years. She did her time. She worked really, really hard. It got to a point where budgets for schools were killed off, really killed off, and our children and young people are suffering because of that now. So we have specialist therapists on the team who currently work with children and young people. So parents bring their kids in and they have a session, they go for a coffee, and we run those sessions. We work with some schools as well, so around London, and outside as well. That schools piece is it's kind of on our mind all the time, and we're finding ways to kind of resource that part of the business. At the minute, adults has made the most sense. It's been the most straightforward. I think the need is so great for children and young people, but we almost kind of don't quite step too confidently into it, because the last thing I'd want us to do is go out with a promise to solve this thing, and it's bigger than all of us and bigger than cell spaces right now, and so we're very cautious. Doesn't massively answer. We do work with children and young people. We don't market that a lot, but we do work with children and young people. In terms of how we grow, on the high streets, I think one in every major city. I'm interested in kind of rural and coastal towns. I'm from Hartlepool in the northeast, and the northeast. Get in. The northeast has got the highest suicide rate. So we're from there to the suicide rate. And genuinely, the northeast got the highest suicide rate in the whole of the UK, and currently very little support. So I'm interested in, yes, let's hit the major cities, but let's really reach out to kind of coastal towns and areas that have been forgotten about, and let's try and find models where government can back a bit of money to support in those places, and we can back it with a bit of money to support as well. So we grow by that. We grow with physical locations. I think we're the only company who's doing that now. Maybe we're on a wrong path, but for me, it's something right about it. And then Cellspace isn't a digital business. We never have been, but we are interested in the B2B part, and we are developing a kind of therapist-led learning platform, which is that's hot off the press. Therapist-led learning platform, which will kind of talk about topics from menopause to neurodiversity, parenting to men's mental health, and trying to find a way to kind of get our content in front of more people. So that's kind of, we'll go through that way as well, which is kind of less interesting to me personally, but kind of there's appetite for it, so we'll meet that.
Awesome. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Lavina Camden, and I'm a journalist from Jamaica. Great to have opened almost mental maintenance shop when people don't really want to normally say outright. You said mental awareness is at its highest. How is it translating into addressing the problem of stigma? Especially, what is your observation about the South Asian origin people, which I fear have a lot of stigma around it? And when a client comes to you, do you pair them keeping their culture in mind as well? Or is it?
Yeah, great question. I think at the heart of any good therapist is intersectionality and how our backgrounds impact the way we meet the world and the way the world meets us and the way we feel and talk about how we feel in our mental health. I think the South Asian community is one of the most stigmatized communities, particularly for mental health. And there's a therapist on our team called Dr. Ravi Gill. And she specializes working particularly with South Asian women. She does incredible work, so shout out to her. She's constantly bringing the conversation of how we create these spaces. And one way we're doing that is within workplaces. So often what there is already within workplaces is, might be South Asian communities, might be LGBTQ plus communities. And we're trying to find ways to work with kind of already established communities to kind of support and elevate their messages and what they're doing as well. In terms of the cultural kind of competence piece, every conversation we have at Cellspace is bearing in mind the person and their identity and how they're showing up. And I think just thinking about my practice with clients, I think there's, as well as stigma, I think there's also deep oppression that we're dealing with, and we're dealing with that in a way that we're not going to always have the answers for, but we're reaching towards a space that at least it feels safe I think that's the start, that's the beginning of it. And I think safety for me is visibility, and visibility looks like on the high street in a way that is a celebration of going, and it's not into a stuffy, horrible leather sofa, strobe lighting environment, but in a space that goes, hey, it's a good thing that you're here. And I think I've seen and I've noticed, even, people coming on their lunch break with their partner, and it's like, oh, this thing that was often hidden, they're coming and doing it on the lunch break with their partner. And, so I think, that to speak into a little bit of that, I could speak more, but I haven't got a huge amount of time. Let's chat after, 100%.
I think, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tonight. It's been amazing. I'm a fellow clinical guest in there and have a psychology business, and I've just been so inspired by you, and I've just kind of been a huge fangirling, all of that sort of stuff. I specialise in maternal mental health and female mental health, but I know that you've become a dad, and I suppose I was just wondering, and I've seen your sort of dad meetups and things like that, and I just wondered if you've got kind of any reflections or thoughts for other working dads, or what it's like becoming a dad, and also any advice that you need to share, I suppose. It's like a different question.
What's your name again?
Gracie.
Gracie.
Yeah, sorry.
Gracie just asked, she made an observation that I've become a dad. Yeah, and what advice would I give to dads, working dads? And you specialise, you're a clinical psychologist, and you specialise in working with maternal mental health. Firstly, thank you for your work. It's incredible, and my wife certainly kind of needed it. It needed people like you champion, what it really means to help women and mothers at the time of they're being most vulnerable and most alone. And we had our first boy in the pandemic, and there was nobody around us, and we were both really, really low, and we struggled, man. It was really hard. So thank you for your work. I think on the dad front, I've got 2 boys, one 4, one 6 months, and what I noticed is that there's a man's group for everyone, everywhere. There's so many. You go and do yoga, they do baby yoga, they've got coffees and pastries, and there's loads of stuff for mums. Now for dads, nothing. And so I started this little thing called Dad Chat. And what I did is I printed out a little poster and put it in the coffee shop where I lived. I said, look, is there any dads out there who want to meet up? I'm going to be here next Saturday. And just hope people would come. And I put it in a local Facebook group, and nobody uses Facebook anymore, but the groups are thriving. If you want to get anything off the ground, go to Facebook groups. It's amazing. And anyway, I showed up really nervous, really anxious with my boy, and 20 dads showed up with their parents. I was like, what? And every month I meet up in a coffee shop, and more dads keep coming. It's like, my advice is just do it, start something. And when I put that out there on LinkedIn, there's men around the country who started their own groups. So there's a guy who did it down south, and he just did it to meet other men. There was 30 of them, and there's I think there's such an appetite for men to have meaningful conversations and meaningful moments. And we're told time and time again, men don't talk about how they feel. Men don't want to talk about how they feel. I think it's absolute nonsense, because clearly they do. Clearly there's a real need for it. So if you're a dad, know that there's other dads who want to be in that with you and in the trenches, and often you're not going to have a meaningful conversation in the park. You're just running after your kids, and trying not to start a baby fight club. And it's it's hard graft, but just do something, and people will meet it. It's a need, and people will really meet that. I think if you're a business, don't neglect the dads. Don't neglect really don't neglect dads. I think just paternal leave is just shocking. Shocking. A week, most people, 2 weeks. What? It's absolutely shocking. I think there's so much we have to do to change that as well. And accept that you'll be a mess. That's what I've had to get in touch with, really accept. I think for me, becoming a dad is one of the hardest things that's ever happened. Not having a dad and becoming a dad. It's oh God, what do I do with that? And put in touch with holding a boy, and I didn't have this. It's so painful, and so difficult. And I thought I was alone in that until I did Dad Chat, and it's oh, no, you're not special, pal. So no, I've been through that as well. Yeah.
How are we doing for time, Alice? I can't really see, you're in the dark. One question.
One more.
Oh my God, like there's 3 hands. I think I saw this hand first.
Sorry guys, you can ask yours at the end. I'm Annika, I'm the founder of Recognise, and I think we do is to help people feel seen, valued and recognised when they need it most. So do a lot of work around mental health and motherhood and many things that we'll talk about tonight. Yeah, as many people have said, thank you so much. I'm so inspired by you.
Bless you.
And I
Thank you.
just see a lot of goodness in you, and the world's a better place for you for sure. You talked about the really hard days of being a founder. So you got a bit emotional. I could probably come today. I just had a hard day of being a founder today. It's just been a shit day.
Yeah.
I think probably a lot of people in here will know what that feels like. What would you say to me? What would you say to other people that are in that place? How do you avoid burnout? What would you say when you're just in the weeds? What would you do?
Yeah, what's your name again? Annika. And what's your company? Recognise. That sounds amazing. And you just did that in practice to me. You just did that. And you just kind of, that's a profound thing, that, isn't it? Just in you to do that. Sorry if I had a shit day. That's what you asked. So what would you say to some founder? Like many founders would have a really hard day, and to avoid burnout, and just to address that. If we weren't here in a room full of people, I'd just sit alongside you. I wouldn't say anything. I should just go, all right, that's really shit. It's really shit. Yeah, it's really shit. And then we'd just talk about how terrible it is and give space to that. I think there's so many founders out there, particularly on LinkedIn, who just shout about 10x in their business, exiting, doing it all, without, any investment, doing this. There's these stories that we're smashed in the face with every time we open that platform, and there's no reality. And I think, I really, really appreciate you bringing the truth of what this is like, because it is hard graft. And so first thing, I just recognise that it's just deeply human to find it hard. And I think that it's just a really good sign that you're doing the right thing and you care about it, and don't forget to put it down. Right? I think that's what I've learned. Like, often when it's hard, it can make us want to grip it tighter and really take control over it and make sure everything's perfect. And I think what I've learned particularly helps with having a co-founder, to go, I need to put this down. I need, just for a day or just for a week, I need to go and, me and my wife talk about needing to see a different face. If we're stressed out with the kids, I just need to see a different face. Put the kids down. And I think it's the same for founders, see a different face, take yourself off, go to a coffee shop and start a conversation with a stranger. Just take yourself out of the world. It's such gravity to it. We live and breathe it all the time. And I think one of the best things is putting it down and having enrichments outside of it. Because I think companies and businesses are fragile. What we're doing is very fragile. I think all businesses are fragile, and one day they won't be here, but we will, and the people around us will. And it's good to remember the things that aren't fragile, but very constant. And it's sometimes I'll just bring a pal from the Northeast. I've been speaking with people from London, very, very different people than me. And I keep pretending I kind of know what they're talking about, but I don't. Sometimes I just ring me Nana. And I'm like, you're right, Nan. Or I ring one of the lads and go, how you doing? I just need to see a different face. And I think that enrichments outside of whatever the businesses we're doing is really helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like we could carry on forever, but thank you genuinely so much for just showing up here, being you, being vulnerable with us, showing us that it's okay to do that, and just creating a space where, people could ask vulnerable questions as well. And this has been such a wonderful, wonderful conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. You've been an amazing host.
Oh,
with glowing skin.
Keep saying.
And thank you. It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that. Thank you.
So we do have some time to hang out. We're here until 9.